Welcome again to Sangha Night and to a mini series of talks. We're carrying on our overarching theme of light in the dark, Buddhism, the Buddhist response to suffering. But we're going to look at a particular text, which you'll find those in the Great Hall have got a copy on their chair. We're looking at the 7 points of mind training, which is a particular Buddhist practice that focuses on dukkha. It's a response to dukkha. So we're going to be focusing on this for the next few weeks, exploring this text, looking at this practice. And I'd just start by saying I'm really excited about that because I really love the 7 point mind training, and I really love it. And it's a practice that I try and live by in a way and put into practice. So hopefully I can communicate some of that this evening. I've got more notes than usual, so hopefully I can still communicate some of my love of this practice. But essentially, what the mind training is essentialized practices, verses and practices, and they're instructions in 7 sections. And they're designed to help us to transform our difficulties, disappointments, and the dissatisfactions of everyday life, and transform those into opportunities for growth and spiritual practice. So these talks follow on from our series looking at dukkha and the Buddhist response to dukkha. And mind training, a central part of mind training is the response to dukkha. So you'll remember that dukkha is usually translated as suffering or unsatisfactoriness. And the root of the word is an ill-fitting wheel. So it's as though our journey through life is uncomfortable because it just doesn't fit right. The wheel just doesn't fit right. So we're kind of, through our journey through life, there's just a sense of unsatisfactoriness, an element of discomfort. It doesn't fully satisfy us. And sometimes suffering is very acute. So in parts of the world at the moment, there's war, there's famine, there's natural disasters. Most of the time, for most of us, it's everyday dukkha, everyday dissatisfaction that we're dealing with and responding to. And as you'll see this evening, responding to dukkha is a central part of mind training. And you could see the mind training as it's a compacted version of the whole Buddhist tradition. The whole of Buddhist tradition is compacted, I think, into mind training. It combines wisdom and compassion of the Mahayana tradition with the tantric approaches of very direct, radical, challenging Dharma. So it combines Mahayana and Vajrayana tantric Buddhism. And it's very powerful mind training and also very radical. It challenges us to make radical changes to how we see life and how we see things, our attitudes to life. And some of the attitudes it suggests we try out are very challenging to us, to our normal worldly way of seeing things. And sometimes they might even seem outrageous or shocking, some of the suggestions that mind training makes. But this is because it asks us to step outside our usual way of viewing and experiencing things and experiment with thinking like a bodhisattva and acting like a bodhisattva. So the bodhisattva, you could say, is the ideal Buddhist. And for me, the bodhisattva ideal is one of the most beautiful human ideals and ideals in Buddhism. And it's what made me want to commit my life to Buddhism, was the bodhisattva ideal. And it's implicit in the way the Buddha lived and taught, but it was made more explicit by later traditions of Buddhism, who thought Buddhism had become a bit too self-centered. So Shantideva says suffering is caused by obsession with ourselves. And the bodhisattva ideal says, well, let's bend the straw the other way and focus on other people. It's focused on compassion and altruistic practice. And that was implicit in the Buddha's teaching and the Buddha's precepts, meditation and wisdom, but it's made more explicit in the Mahayana. And this is where the 7 point mind training is based. So the bodhisattva is completely obsessed with enlightenment. All the bodhisattva's energies are focused on enlightenment, but not for any selfish gain, not just for him or herself. The bodhisattva sees that every human has the possibility and the potential to become a Buddha. And the bodhisattva wants to alleviate the suffering of all beings. It wants everybody to grow and fulfill that potential Buddhahood. So mind training, it involves training our mind and our heart in that spirit of the bodhisattva. It's training our mind and heart to become the mind and heart of a bodhisattva. We're training our mind in the bodhisattva attitude, the bodhisattva spirit. So mind training is very connected with a text that we refer to a lot at Sanganite and at this Buddhist center, which is the Bodhicharyavatara, the path of training in the Bodhisattva way. So I'll just read some verses from that text by Shantideva that just captures some of the heart, some of that heart of the Bodhisattva. So Shantideva says, we're all the same. We all feel the same suffering and happiness. So I should look after others as I look after myself. Just as I love and cherish my body, which is divided into many limbs, so I should love and cherish the whole world, which is divided into many beings. Just let somebody come into the red wall, just pause. So I should dispel the suffering of others because it's suffering like my own suffering. I should help others because they are all living beings, as I am a living being. When we all want happiness and all fear suffering, what's so special about me that I only look after myself? So to cure my own suffering as well as the suffering of others, I devote myself to others and will see them as myself. From now onwards, the welfare of all beings is my concern. These limbs and this body belong to all beings. It'd be wrong to use them just for myself. So that's the ideal of the Bodhisattva, which is very, very sublime and very high ideal, which I find very beautiful. And I'm greatly inspired by these verses of the Bodhicharyavatara. And when I read the text, and we often study the text at Sanganite, it feels like Shantideva's speaking to me directly to get me to change, is challenging me to change. But Shantideva lived at a time, he lived in a big monastic university called Nalanda, and his text was written to monks. He was speaking to people who lived that kind of lifestyle in a very different time, 1300 years ago. And our lifestyle, my lifestyle, is very different to Shantideva's. I've got much, much more complexity in my life than Shantideva would have. I've got a family, others you might have dependents in your life, complex life. We've got jobs, we've got mortgages or rent to pay, social media, Netflix, smart TVs, tablets, smartphones. We've got all this complexity in our lives that Shantideva wouldn't have. So is it realistic to think, well, can I, this is a question we might ask ourselves, can we train in the Bodhisattva path in the same way that Shantideva and those monks and nuns would have trained in? Is that realistic for us with our lifestyle? And what I love about the mind training tradition is that the mind training tradition says, yes, you can practice the Bodhisattva spirit and train in that cultivate that attitude in a variety of lifestyles, and particularly in an active, busy, challenging life. You can practice and cultivate that kind of mind, the mind of a Bodhisattva. So that's one of the reasons why I really love mind training, because I have a very complex life. As I say, I've got young children. I work at a city centre, Buddhist centre, a complex situation. I don't get to go on retreats very often, but I can practice this every day, the mind training. So, I love its connection to the Bodhicitta and to Shantideva. I love its connection to Indian and Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So yeah, hopefully I can communicate this evening my enthusiasm for mind training. So let's have a look at the text. So you've all got a text on your chairs, hopefully on Zoom, the magic of Zoom, you might see a text at some point, but if not, I'm going to read it out. So it begins, homage to the great compassionate one. This elixir-like instruction is transmitted from Serlingpa. Know the meaning of this text, and the 5 defilements will be turned into the path to enlightenment. So it says mind training is elixir-like because it's highly concentrated and effective. And in alchemy, the practice of alchemy, the elixir is the magical medicine. So this is a magical, potent medicine. Serlingpa refers to a teacher called Dharmakirti who lived on an island called Sumatra, which was called the Golden Isle. And he was the person who was associated with transmitting the mind training teachings. But the reason that these teachings and the tradition spread and is alive today was because of another great Indian teacher called Atisha, who's another teacher that I really love, Atisha. And he was in the 10th century, a couple of hundred years after Shantideva, Atisha. And apparently Atisha was meditating at Bodh Gaya, had a vision of Dharmakirti, Serlingpa, and realized he had to travel to Indonesia, to Sumatra, to practice the mind training, receive the mind training teachings from him. So he spent 12 years in Indonesia, practicing, receiving the mind training teachings from Dharmakirti, returned to India and started to spread those teachings. He became the abbot of Nalanda University, the same university that Shantideva was based at. But then he was invited to Tibet and to spread the teachings in Tibet. Initially, he didn't want to do that, and there's this backstory to that, but he did go to Tibet and lived there until he died. And he practiced the mind training tradition, and that was passed on to his disciples. And it's become one of the central to all forms of Tibetan Buddhism, the mind training tradition. It's called Lojong in Tibetan Buddhism. And apparently, it's just shortly after Atisha moved across to Tibet, there was a Muslim invasion throughout India, and basically Nalanda University Buddhism was wiped out. So it's only largely through Atisha moving and spreading these teachings to Tibet, and they spread to other places that we've had them to practice. So Atisha is a really important figure. Anyway, so that's the background. It says homage to the Compassionate One. It's transmitted from Sir Lingpa. But then it tells us, know the meaning of this text, and the 5 defilements will be turned into the path to enlightenment. So the 5 defilements are called the 5 Glaciers, sometimes known as the 5 poisons, the 5 torments, that which torments or defiles the mind. So these are negative roots from which all negative emotions arise and grow. And this is the mind that we're trying to transform. And they are, the defilements are greed, hatred, delusion, envy, and conceit. This is the mind that we're trying to train. And it's as though the mind is poisoned by these things: greed, hatred, delusion, envy, and conceit. And we're trying to transform these things into the heart and mind of a bodhisattva. So greed to transform into generosity, hatred into love, delusion into wisdom. So this is good news. This is good news for us. So even negative mental states are part of the path. The defilements are transformed, they're turned into the path to enlightenment through this practice of mind training. So the next lines of the text, and you'll find those of us in the Great Hall have got a slogan card with this on. I'll hold that up so you can, I'll just read it out, actually, it might be more effective. The next line of the text, when evil fills the world and its inhabitants, turn adverse conditions into the path to enlightenment. I'll read that again. When evil fills the world and its inhabitants, turn adverse conditions into the path to enlightenment. And this line, in a way, is the heart, it's the essence of the mind training. Mind training is about transforming the situations of everyday life and the negative emotions that they give rise to, turning that into the path to enlightenment. So perhaps you might think, and maybe sometimes I might think, well, I can't really practice Buddhism. I can't commit to Buddhism. There's too many obstacles in my life. There's too much adversity, too much difficulty in my life. So maybe I just need to wait until the future when that's all sorted out, when there's less adversity, less obstacles, then I can really commit to Buddhism. I can practice it in the future when life's a bit easier. But mind training says that, well, those difficulties and that adversity is the practice. You turn that into the practice. So you can only really apply the antidote to the poisons, to the glaciers, when the poison arises. You don't have to wait until life is easy. So in a crisis or a situation of adversity, you come face to face with the glaciers in your mind, the poisons. And maybe, and this is the case with me often, it's after it's too late, but you learn something about it, you notice, and with practice, you can do something about it sooner. But you come face to face with the negative emotions and the poisons, the glaciers, when you meet adversity. So that's the time to apply the antidote. That's the time to practice. So our ordinary life is bound to throw up lots of adversity. And unless we see these as practice, Buddhism just becomes something we do when we've got ideal conditions and, just on one night a week or when we're on retreat. And our real life, our job or our relationships kind of get in the way of our practice. So mind training says, turn the adversity of your life into practice. So you can see mind training as a form of alchemy. a form of spiritual alchemy. Alchemy is about transforming base metal, the worthless base metal, into gold. And mind training is about transforming the normal base metal of our everyday life and our reactions into spiritual gold of the bodhicitta, the bodhisattva spirit. So, yeah, another question arises in relation to this about life and adversity. And so another kind of doubt or question sometimes that has gone through my mind in the past, might go through your mind, is, well, don't you, to be a proper Buddhist, don't you have to be a monk or a nun or a renunciant? Isn't that what a proper Buddhist is? And that, one approach to the Dharma life could be to try and deliberately make situations ideal for practice, avoid situations when you might experience negative emotions and adversity. So live a solitary life as a hermit up a hill, permanently be on retreat. But I don't know about you, I can't live like that. I don't live like that. And I can't live like that. And it's probably unrealistic for a lot of people in our Sangha, in our society. So does that make me less of a Buddhist than somebody who lives that like that? I don't know. But realistically, we all live complex lives, and we're constantly experiencing adversity and negative emotions. And mind training says, well, you can use this. This is the elixir like magic. You can transform those negative situations and that adversity into the path to enlightenment. And it's a way of practicing in the midst of a complex life, an active life, a productive life, full of difficulties. So this is why I really, really love mind training and see it as essential to me, because those of you who know me will know my life is complex. But I feel like in the midst of that complexity, I can practice and I can transform my heart and mind. And I feel like I've done that to some extent. And hopefully through this talk, I can share how that's possible. So in alchemy, to change the base metal into gold, you need to heat it up intensely in a crucible. And to really change spiritually, we need intensity. We need that heat of intensity. And we certainly get intensity in the crucible of a life that's engaged in the world. And of course, I'm not saying, I don't want to be misunderstood. Of course, we definitely need space in our life for deep meditation practice, for retreats, for withdrawal, to explore higher states of being. We definitely need that in our life. But if our practice is only about that, we can become a bit fragile and a bit precious. Our practice gets a bit precious. So we can also practice in a life that is full of complexity and adversity. I'm sure if your life is like mine, there'll be adversity and there'll be complexity, but mind training says, well, that's good news, because you can make that your practice. So in difficult situations and circumstances, we can transform, but we can also test ourselves, test our practice, learn what we need to change, come up against our shortcomings. And you can see it as bodybuilding or gym work, if that kind of metaphor works for you. In those situations of adversity, we're developing. I gave a talk a few weeks about the practice of kshanti, forbearance, patience. And in these situations, you can develop forbearance. And it's a muscle. It is like a muscle that you can cultivate and develop, become stronger, so that you can manage and face more and more, greater and greater adversity. Yeah, so mind training involves a change of attitude. So we can see adversity and dukkha and difficulty, well, not as bad, but as an opportunity. Something actually we can even be excited about. Yeah, this is an opportunity to grow, to practice, to change, to transform, to test ourselves. So we experience situations as adverse or difficult because of our attitudes towards them. And we can change our attitudes and then change the situation into a positive situation. So, yeah, an analogy might be exercising or going to the gym. It's similar to that. So, yeah, we have to go through discomfort and pain and but then we're willing to do that because we want to grow. We want to become fitter and stronger. And it's the same with our mind and the same with our heart. And spiritual growth involves discomfort. It involves going outside our comfort zones, letting go of old identities and views of ourselves, and it's going to be uncomfortable. So mind training has a very positive message. It says, everything that arises is an opportunity to practice and to develop patience, kshanti. Yeah, and often it's our labels, it's our ideas of what's kind of good and what's bad that makes a situation seem difficult or adverse to us. So apparently, I'm told in Hamlet, I'm not so well read, but in Hamlet there's a quote that says, "There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so." There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Apparently Janet is Act 4 of Hamlet. Thanks, Janet. English teacher, retired English teacher. Thanks, Janet. Act 4 of Hamlet. Nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And this isn't in talking about ethically good or bad. Of course, there is good or bad in terms of ethics. This is our idea of what is good for us or bad for us. Is that to do with our thinking and how we label it? And often it's to do with the worldly winds, which we heard about a few weeks ago. So a bad situation would usually mean we're on the wrong end of the worldly winds. So the worldly winds are pairs of opposites that blow our ego about. They blow us around. And there's what we see as good and what we see as bad in terms of the worldly winds. So on the good side is pleasure, pain, gain, and status. On the bad side is pain, loss, and the other ones. Lack of status and yeah, I can't remember, my mind's gone blank, but the opposite of the good ones. And so a bad situation is being on the wrong end of the worldly wind. So it would mean that we're going to get blamed for something, or we're going to experience something uncomfortable or painful. Maybe we're going to lose our possessions or money, or we're going to lose some status, perhaps. But we all know that status and possessions, money, career, they're not going to make us happy. And we ought to know it by now. It's a bit of a cliche that they don't bring us happiness. But we know that the worldly winds, those things aren't good. They're going to, often if we end up getting them and get our way, we end up being less happy than we are now. And becoming free from dependence on outer things, free from dependence on status or what other people's opinions of us are, that will make us happier. So that's the opposite of what the worldly winds say. And if we cultivate wisdom, positive emotions towards others, that brings us happiness. So when the worldly winds are blowing against us, mind training says, well, that's good. This is good. It's an opportunity. This is an opportunity to grow. It's a chance to let go of our status, to let go of our clinging to that, our attachment to possessions. Ultimately, it's going to make us happier. This is positive. This is an opportunity. So we can change how we see adversity as actually it's something positive, and we're going to grow. It's an opportunity to grow. So at the heart of this and at the heart of mind training is adversity and dukkha. So I've got our, you won't be able to see this on Zoom so well, but you can imagine the intro course picture of the wheel of life, our kind of scribble of a circle, kind of bit like a circle, and then a spiral coming off the top of the circle. So we've got the wheel of life and the spiral. And dukkha is at the heart of this. And there's a particular presentation of the wheel in life that places dukkha as a kind of central axis point at which we can choose, at which we can move off onto the spiral. And in the 3 Jewels, Sangharakshita says, dukkha represents the point of intersection of 2 different orders of reaction. It's the point of choice and decision. A choice, moreover, that confronts us, not on 2 or 3 momentous occasions only, but every instant of our lives. So every instant, every moment in our lives, there's a choice, and there's a choice about whether we go round and round reacting to dukkha and experience and staying on the wheel of life. And there's a choice every moment to do something creative that moves us off that wheel and onto the spiral path to enlightenment. So yeah, I'll just refer to or you can imagine, or I'll refer to the wheel of life image over there. So our usual habitual response to dukkha is our mind becomes poisoned by the glaciers that I talked about earlier. So there's dukkha, there's adversity, difficulty, and our mind is poisoned by greed or hatred or envy or conceit. And if we react, well, before we know it, this is what we do. We react with anger, blaming other people, craving. And we react in our habitual way, and we stay on the wheel, and we're creating more and more suffering for ourselves. And in the future, we're going back around the wheel again. But we can use that moment of dukkha is an opportunity, time and time again, every moment in our lives, to change and to grow. We can use that as an opportunity. We can see it as an opportunity. There's dukkha, there's something, and there's difficult in our lives. We've got a choice. We can use it as an opportunity to grow. And that involves, to begin with, starting to see the label or story that we're giving this situation. How are we framing this situation that makes it look bad or adverse or difficult? And can we reframe that as an opportunity? So I've just got a few examples. So for example, well, I've left my phone at home this evening. I didn't mean to. I was driving to the Buddhist centre thinking, oh no, I've left my phone at home. That means I can't check my messages. I can't be in touch with people. I can't check what the football score is on the way home. Dukkha, you know, and should I go? I've left it too late to drive, but I can't turn back to get my phone because I'm going to be late for the meeting, and I was late for the meeting anyway. Dukkha. But so that, in terms of, you know, the worldly winds, that's dukkha, that's kind of loss, that's pain. But in terms of mind training, great. You know, my phone, it's an opportunity to undermine my attachment to my phone and to social media and football and all the other things, to live a more simple life, to be more content. This is an opportunity. This isn't a difficulty. This is actually great news that I've left my phone at home. Didn't feel like it, felt like a moment of dukkha, but actually mind training says this is great news. This is an opportunity. This doesn't happen to me, but you might be at work where your boss blames you for something that you haven't done. Well, great. Well, first of all, the worldly winds would say, boo, that's terrible, I'm getting blamed for something I haven't done. But the mind training would say, well, this is an opportunity to weaken your dependency on what other people think about you, to become stronger, to weaken your attachment to status and praise from other people. This is great. This is an opportunity, mind training would say. And actually, if you think about what really makes you happy, it's true, it's good, this is good for you. Like, if you can weaken that dependency on what other people think about you, that's great, that's an opportunity. Or someone else gets the credit for something you've done and you feel really envious and jealous about it. Well, actually, the mind training would say, great, this is an opportunity to weaken your ego and to develop mudita, to develop sympathetic joy for other people's happiness, this is the mind we're trying to create, is the mind of a bodhisattva. So it's about seeing when the worldly winds blow against us, we have that initial reaction of, oh, that's terrible. And then catching that and then thinking, well, is it really terrible? And how can I use this as an opportunity to develop the bodhisattva mind, the bodhisattva spirit, to weaken my ego, to reduce that? So there are those moment things that happen where they're not in our control. And then there's also things that happen regularly in our life that we view as difficult situations. It might be work situations, relationships, things that are painful in your life. And again, we can look at how we frame those, how we label those as adverse, difficult situations and think, well, how can we see them differently? How can these be opportunities to practice? Yeah, so I think for me, life as a parent is full of those kind of opportunities, and it just happens regularly, really, where there's dukkha. You know, there's also lots and lots of joy and happiness and love and play and spontaneity, but lots and lots of dukkha and challenge as well. So just thinking of some examples recently, one was, for about 2 weeks, I just didn't get sleep, like enough sleep regularly, like just very, very disrupted sleep for for quite a few years. And then, but also for the last 2 weeks specifically, I didn't get very good sleep at all. And one night I just, I'd gone to bed later than I wanted to. I was a bit wired after the teaching at the Buddhist centre, didn't get to sleep so early. 12:30, my daughter came in, just vomited all over me, all over my bedside table, all over the carpet, everywhere basically. And, just got to deal with it. So I got to get out of bed and get what she needs so my wife can help her, start picking bits of sick off the floor, off the carpet. And it's just, it's dukkha, it is dukkha. But at the same time, just one of the things I've realized is just I need to really practice patience, just again and again, just practice patience, and just get used to accept dukkha and accept not having things how I'd like them to be. I do find that that works as a practice. I do feel like I can handle more and more adversity, and it seems to be having an effect on loosening my kind of sense of being in control of things, maybe Atman, the kind of ego at the heart of things. Mind training can be a practice in ethics and in compassion and in wisdom, as we'll see over the coming weeks. I could give more opportunities of parenting, being in a relationship, being married, just things you commit to a situation and there's dukkha, and you have to practice patience. This is what I found in my life, working at the Buddhist Center, being a parent with young children. Patience is a practice that's really helped me to grow, and I've been able to cultivate that. And mind training is a thread of practice for me, that it's not just being in the gap, because it is being in the gap, but it's more than that. It's being in the gap combined with the bodhisattva ideal and trying to cultivate the mind and heart of a bodhisattva and the bodhicitta. And keeping both of those in mind is really potent practice for me. And that's what this says. It's like an elixir-like practice. Yeah, keeping moment by moment was an opportunity to change and grow, but it's also an opportunity to try and cultivate a bit more of that bodhisattva spirit, that bodhisattva attitude. And if we keep doing that over and over again, gradually that will have an effect, that will have a big effect on us. So there's basically a big part of practicing in this way is the gap, which we're all familiar with, and just noticing your reactions. When you react to something, when the world isn't going your way, a situation isn't going your way, probably the first, well, if you've got mindfulness, you'll start to notice yourself reacting. If you haven't, then you'll realize after you've reacted that you've reacted. And that's good as well, because you can reflect and think, okay, well, what happened there? What went wrong? But if with mindfulness, you can notice yourself starting to react, and then you can practice. You've got that kind of moment of choice that Sangha talks about. So with a real practice of mindfulness, noticing your reactions, you can really transform yourself. So in the beginning, it's just noticing your reactions and using that as a basis for practice. And you don't need any special equipment, and you don't need to spend a lot of money. It just happens. Your reactions just happen. Everyone in this room, it reacts. I react. We all react. So this is the practice we can all do. And when you notice, maybe you notice the steam building up inside your ears, ready to explode, a reaction's happening, and you can feel those in your body. You can literally feel the reactions in your body. When you're craving, your mouth starts to salivate. You can notice that. When you're anxious, your heart beats faster and your chest tightens. You clench when you're tense. Your body, you can notice how you're reacting in your body. And so if you clock that, it gives you an opportunity to do something about it. It gives you a choice. It turns it into an opportunity. Yeah, so we can learn to see these moments or reactions as an opportunity to change the nature of your mind. This is mind training. It's moment by moment, and it's in everyday life. And it's really, really potent. That's why I love it. And it's not something you just do on retreat, and it's not just something you do when you're meditating. It's done in the midst of life. And so you've got so many opportunities to practice. Well, in a way, every moment is an opportunity to practice. And it might be tonight, it might be we notice the dishwasher's full and someone's put a dirty cup on top. So you think, well, I could just put my dirty cup on top, or I could empty the dishwasher. And it's, there's a choice there. And, it's just interesting to notice what we do in that choice. Or there's one bit of cake left. Are you going to eat the cake yourself? Are you going to make somebody else a cup of tea? There's just these small moments where we can practice and train ourselves in the bodhisattva spirit. Okay, so I'll summarize by saying, mind training is a powerful and radical set of practices, and we're going to be exploring them more over the coming weeks in more detail. And it's about transforming our negative emotions into something positive, into wisdom and a strong sense of connection with other beings. It's about transforming our dukkha from something that cuts us off from other people into an opportunity to connect to other people. And it's about transforming dukkha from something we try and avoid into an opportunity to grow. And it's about transforming adverse situations that we think are bad and shouldn't be happening into really valuable opportunities to practice and to grow. So Shantideva says, when we tame our mind, we tame all threats and suffering, and all fear and suffering comes from the mind. We can't cover the whole world in leather, but we can put leather on the soles of our feet. And that's one of my favorite, if not, I think it might be my favorite verse of Buddhism, of Dharma. For me, it's the heart of mind training as well. It's taming the mind, taming those reactions and taming the mind. We can't tame the world around us, but we can tame our mind and train it. So yeah, mind training challenges us to see that most of our suffering comes from our own mind. And instead of suffering, we can use adversity as opportunities to reduce our selfishness, our ego clinging. And we can spot when we're creating this kind of prison of me, this prison of selfishness, and we can start to just break little holes in it, break little holes in the wall so that something else can shine through that, which is the bodhicitta or the bodhisattva spirit. That'd be good. I think that'd be a good point to stop. Okay, so you've got your text to take home, and if you can, just treat this text as something very, very valuable. Don't put your cup of tea on it. Even like if traditionally Buddhist, we wouldn't put it on the floor. We'd kind of treat this as something very, very valuable. So if you can, adopt that attitude, but that's up to you. And you've got your card with your slogan on to practice. And what we're going to do is each week, as well as giving you a slogan card, we're going to set some homework, which we like similar to how we would do on the 6-week courses. We're going to make this practical. So you've got some homework, and the homework is taking this slogan about turning adverse conditions into the path to enlightenment. So take that as our slogan for this week, and in groups, try and think of one adverse situation, one adverse condition coming up in the week ahead. And how are you going to transform that? It might be a difficult relationship, a difficult meeting, painful situation. How could you think differently about that? How could you turn it into an opportunity to practice? So that's going to be what we'll discuss in the groups, and also your homework for the week ahead to talk about next week. Okay, so for groups,